Welcome, everyone. I'll call to order the workshop session. First item of business will be discussion and updates related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Chief Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The microphone is on already, so I don't have to turn it off and mess that up. Last time we met was March 28th of 2022. The current numbers for COVID-19 in the state of Texas and Lampasas County. In the state, we have 5,518,419 total cases. This is an increase of 23,133 in the last 2 weeks. Those numbers seem to be quite high when you look at it that way and you say 23,000, but keep in mind that's down significantly from what we were doing 6 months ago. So we are trending in the right direction. Lampasas County is at 4,750. This is actually an increase of 11, and that number is going up from what we had last 2 weeks. We had kind of flattened out here, but we did go up quite a bit here, but still only 11. That's a pretty good number. We'll take that. Total fatalities across the state, 86,241. This is an increase of 373 in 2 weeks. This number is down significantly from what we had been doing. 2 weeks before that, we had 819 fatalities, so we've cut that in more than half, so that's a good sign right there. DSHS shows that we've stayed at 90 fatalities here in Lampasas County. As far as the hospitalization, 856 COVID patients across the state. That's a very low number. That's a very low number. We're down underneath 1,000 now, so good for that. It was 1,152 at our last meeting. Here in Trauma Service Area L, we have 14 that are hospitalized. This is down from 26. 8 of those 14 are in regular rooms, 5 are in ICU rooms. We also have 1 pediatric patient. There's no ICU in the pediatrics. We do have 3 patients that are still on a ventilator, and in the last 24 hours, we did have 5 hospital admissions in Trauma Service Area L. As far as vaccinations by zip code, we actually increased 17 more. We're up to 6,297 that have had their first shot. As far as completely vaccinated, we've increased that number by 15. That number is 5,547 now. For Lampasas County, about the same. We've got 11,165 with at least 1 vaccine. That number's up 35. And then as far as completely vaccinated, we increased that number by 31. So our total is now 9,669. Does anybody have any questions on COVID-19 for me?
You keep mentioning 1 pediatric.
Yes.
Not the same one, I hope.
I don't know if it's that same one or not. And the same thing on the ventilator. I don't know if those are the same 3 that have been on the ventilator or not. One would assume that they're probably, if they're on a ventilator, it probably is the same. So,
okay. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Next item is discussion regarding Fund 40 projects and gap funding sources. Finley?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an item that was a topic of conversation at our March 21st planning meeting. Staff at that time brought you a list of action steps for consideration March 28th, and one of the things on there is that this is probably based on the funding source as well as the projects and how we would utilize some other funding sources, namely potential CO funding. This would be a good thing to keep an eye on. What I'd like to do is, obviously I'm going to throw out some disclaimers tonight relative to volatility in the market for labor and materials, and certainly what we've seen, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail on my manager's report related to the skate park and hostess house, but we always want to let you know that these are estimates. We try to give you the date of those estimates and some perspective on what we may or may not be seeing. I'd be interested in your comments regarding the format. Again, you also have included in here the balance sheet from Fund 40 as well as a finance statement. Even though that fund tends to grow in terms of an income statement, now that we're using some of that reserve that has been built up over the years, the reserves will come down. But if you look just simply at the income statement, you should, as we've shown you in the past, have seen some growth within the fund. I want to refer to the project accounting worksheet that is included in your packet. I believe that's page number 8. And again, I want to throw out some, what I guess I would call disclaimers and some additional clarification on some of these numbers. The fund balance, as you see on the top, the very top number, about 1.4 million. Our year-to-date income, this is receipts that we have, the actual tax receipts we've received from the entities noted on the financial statement that's included in your packet. Total about $84,000. That'd be a 6-month term. So if you wanted to, obviously there's some seasonal changes in terms of hotel stays, but if you wanted to double that, that would give you an idea of your annual income from those sources. Year-to-date expenditures, and this is all expenditures, including our normal organization requests, promotion and advertising, but it also includes what we've spent as well on the projects, and we'll go into detail down below. The one thing I would point out to you under the footnote number 1 is the chamber allocation. We have not expensed any chamber allocation yet this year, and that is likely to, I think Melissa will be coming in probably the next meeting or two for their allocation. That's a budgeted amount of $55,000 per year. So just keep in mind we've got a large number in there that will fill in the blanks at some point to give you some perspective on the kind of day in, day out expenditures and income of that fund. The engineering and surveying, as well as the capital building and grounds, those are related to the projects that council has taken action on previously. Total year-to-date expenses about $228,000. In terms of how that's allocated by project, if you'll look at the next line, we have Campbell Pavilion, Hostess House, Skate Park, Hannah Spring fencing, wayfinding, signage. If you look at item number 2, we have, after our, and again, this will be reported further in the manager's report, but after our follow-up phone call with our contractor, based on the geotech, there's going to be some substantial costs in terms of that pad. As you recall, for the pavilion, we had to excavate 4 feet and then bring in 4 feet worth of lift for that pad. So that's something that we'll probably talk a little bit more in detail about through the manager's report, or certainly it could be talked about under this agenda item as well. The estimated or actual contract amount, we just wanted to let you know that the Campbell Park Pavilion represents the actual contracted amount, about $178,000. Of that, we've spent $150 to date. It also includes the Hostess House represents the estimate from July 2021, and that is an inclusive of soft costs, structural, and the actual addition. I just want to reemphasize, we've all seen that a lot can change in the construction side and the building side, so we're certainly crossing our fingers. We've seen it come in less sometimes than what we've estimated, but certainly we would just want to reemphasize that there is volatility in terms of labor and materials. The other item that it is footnoted there is 4, which is the expenditures to date in the Campbell Park. That includes the pad, steel, soft cost, and slab. Hostess House, the $32,000 that you see up there, represents design and construction documents, and the skate park represents public engagement and design, and that's about $8,000 for the skate park at this point. Of the total to completion, about, again, this is based on actual as well as estimates, total to completion about 1.7. As if we just do the simple math and subtract our fund balance, that leaves a gap of about $291,000. And at different meetings, we've talked to you about that number being larger than $291,000. The other thing that we've talked about is, and again, this is to illustrate as well what we intend to do in terms of coverage from the CO funds. That's something that we've actually earmarked, and certainly if council has a different direction they'd like to go, if you think we can cover that out of some other reserves, we can certainly provide council options for that as well. But this gives us where we're at this point in time, knowing that there are a lot of unknowns, but at least it gives us an idea of, if we were to do these, if these projects all came in at target, instead of 400,000 to 600,000 out of the CO to earmark for the hostess house, you might only need about 291. Of course, council's also made the request that we keep about 200,000 in reserves for the Fund 40, so we would include that as kind of a bump up to that. But again, tell me if this makes sense to you, if you'd like a different format, but this is, at this point in time, kind of what we're looking at in terms of that gap. We know we want to buffer that gap by 200,000, but it appears to be close to what we've been talking about.
Finley, the old CO, the 2016, I believe,
Yes.
is there any of that that would qualify under this? I understand maybe the Hannah fencing.
That CO, the 2016, was inclusive of some general parks projects, so I believe it would be. As I recall, and again, we went over this March 21st, the amount that was remaining in that CO was on the order of 144,000. Of that, we've encumbered about 72,000 for the Turner Field project. So you'd have some there. Certainly, you've got some in the Key Avenue as well. I believe about 100,000, Yvonne. So you have some in that as well. So there's certainly some other pockets that we could also take a look at as well.
Yeah. I don't know what the other council thinks, but Hannah Springs fencing, to me, makes sense to come out of the old CO, only because it included in the parks.
Where did Chris intend to take the 40?
We only had the 40 earmarked out of Fund 40. I think anything above and beyond that is at council direction. But certainly we would provide you options. And I don't think we're looking at, certainly we would want to get your input tonight. I think what Ryan will tell you here in a minute regarding the Hannah Spring fencing is that we've got just a couple of more stones to turn over on that. But yes, absolutely, we could look at
It's already allocated
options.
out of
Yes.
Fund 40. No. Any other questions or comments?
Does this make sense to you? Does this kind of answer one of the questions you're looking for?
Yeah, it means we got to redo and move money around.
It does, as well as this is something we need to, as projects mature and are implemented, this is a piece of information that we want to redo and bring back to you on a recurring basis.
Well, it may come to a point that we have to slow some of that down.
Is there a set of plans for the hostess house and all that are already done?
The structural is completely done. There's the construction docks for the addition have not been done, other than the what I would consider the conceptuals that you've previously seen, and we'd be happy to get those to you and get you an update on the construction docks.
Yeah, I'd love to see them.
Anything else?
I'll get a timeline on when those might be done. I know they were cramming to make sure the structural was 100% ready to be bid, and we'll report on that later in my report
When
as well.
is the next meeting on the skate park?
I don't believe the next meeting has been set. They've been trying to schedule the next meeting, but I don't believe it's been set yet.
Okay.
All set?
Yes, ma'am.
Next item is discussion regarding draft project scope for New Hope Baptist Church and the historic colored school.
Again, Mayor and Council, this is an item that was offspring of our March 21st planning meeting. We certainly appreciate the input and the direction we received from council at that time. One of the items, again, that was put down in the timeline that was discussed with you on March 28th were possible next steps. We wanted to give you an idea of and some opportunity for you to provide staff some direction on next steps for those projects. Just to be clear, you have a copy of a proposal. I'm not asking you to consider this proposal. What I'm asking you to consider and provide input on are the scope that is included with this proposal. If it makes sense to you, and as I talked to Councilman Clark earlier today, one of the things that we may want to consider, whether that's an internal discussion or discussion with the architect, is what is our ultimate goal? What is the goal for use? How do we want to not only use it, but how do we want to market it? And so that may be something that we, depending on council's input, include in a scope. The things that I think certainly that Mr. Naylor pointed out in his previous scope was investigation and architectural recommendations, investigation of structural integrity, investigation of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and then determination and feasibility of restoration and budgets, which I think is a fairly broad brushstroke, but I think it all seems to make sense that you may want to provide some input on. The other item that we would also be interested in your input on and your discussion is the historic colored school. At this point, as I've said probably 100 times, I know Councilman Williamson's heard me say this, a lot of the heavy lifting for that project has been done. The electric's been upgraded, it's weatherproofed. We still have some work to do, no doubt, but primarily we're looking at ceiling, lighting, flooring, and certainly some exterior flat work. And I think I would just remind council that we have a great document to provide some guidance to us in what Preservation Lampasas put together and helped work with some years ago, the Historic Colored School Structure Report and Restoration Master Plan, that we would obviously follow that as closely as we possibly could. But I would be interested in what your thoughts are on that. What we will do on the regular agenda, and again, we're not asking you to approve the proposal, but this scope makes sense. Staff, go ahead and either seek proposal or wait to seek a proposal, but making sure that if there's some items that you want to throw into a scope, whether that's an architectural scope or just something we want to make sure we do internally, that we have that on our list.
I believe this is what we've been discussing for several months now.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with part one.
I'm sorry?
I'm comfortable with part one of the feasibility assessment, and I want to find out structurally what we need to do before we get it.
Master plan, go ahead, Randy, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm interested in what we're going to have to do structurally with the plumbing as well as the building and the air conditioning and so on and so forth, and kind of know where we're at on that so we'll know where to go and kind of get an idea of what it's going to cost us. But before I delve too much, I want to make sure that we've got a building we can work with.
So we're all comfortable with just giving staff the go-ahead to look into this?
I have some questions, if that's okay.
I do too.
I do too.
So, and I know you're not asking us to consider this proposal yet, but basically the way I'm looking at it is we're 10 grand in on the planning to plan, and then there's going to be more money so we're planning to plan right now, and then there's more money for the plan. Like, how far are we in on this before we even know if it's a good idea? Like spending money. Well, on here, I'm just looking at Reliance Architecture's proposal. So
Right.
for New Hope Baptist Church.
Right. And we have not spent any money with them yet on this
No,
project.
no.
But I think that's probably what you're looking at to know where you're at. So if you want to look at this like we did the Hostess House, we came up with a concept with, the fact that we needed structural remediation, had some options for floor plan, estimates on what that would cost. So yes, this is like a phase one, or almost on the engineering side, we'd call it a preliminary engineering report. But I think to get some of those questions answered, and Councilman Morris, I would also point out that we'd probably do a geotech, which would be another $3,000 to $4,000, just to make sure that we can support that structure not only for the next 10 years, but for the next 100 years. So
That's my
so
hesitation.
there are some costs involved in just saying, is it feasible or not?
And that's like my hesitation, I guess, is like, nothing against the church, and it's awesome that they're donated to the city, but, I mean, is that building even worth what the quote would be to fix it? Is where my hesitation and question comes
Sure.
in.
Well,
Understood.
I kind of want to piggyback off of what Zach has said with you mentioned the master plan for the colored school. Is that a master plan of usage, of how it's going to be used, of possibly the types of people that are going to be in there, and how is it going to be used and that type of thing? Because, I mean, I'm kind of thinking when we do projects, we
Yeah, no,
have an end game in mind
Right.
before we
It was
go to
thought,
the expense.
it could be used for meetings, weddings, any sort of venue that's going to be people. With the addition of the church, there are bathrooms. There could be a covered walkway to get from the one building to the other.
Yeah.
That was the original plan.
Yeah, because before we sink any money into a feasibility study, I'd kind of like to know what the end game is. Because if we are thinking what our end game is, then we can look at the feasibility.
So what do you guys see as the usage of the building? I mean, do you have something other than?
You know, I don't have a clue, and I think that's probably something that's possibly that we need to look into and put it out with the community, or I don't know what that looks like. But somebody else coming in there, they may decide, hey, you know, we can remodel this thing and make it work, not cost the city a thing.
And I do think we need more meeting space, but, you know, we need those restrooms and all that stuff. And I guess the feasibility would be like, can you separate that into two, or do you have to include the whole thing as one to get what we need? And is that what this whole study is specifically for?
This study hasn't been defined yet. So that's one of the questions we throw out to you. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, is that we need to have a conversation, perhaps in a future planning meeting, about, you know, what is our vision for this facility? And I think, and that's something that we might even bring somebody in. You know, you might bring Mr. Naylor in and say, hey, I've worked with these buildings. This is what they've been able to do. Perhaps, and then try to start from that point. Or I think ultimately you're still going to need to know about the structural integrity and
Yep.
the MEP and all that.
I'm certainly confused and I don't have an idea either what it would overall be used for, but I would like somebody with some knowledge that can give us some guidance in that direction. I don't feel.
I thought we had discussed it on our last planning session, that what it could be used for. And it could be used for anything we want it to be used for once it becomes usable. The school needs work, and it has no restrooms, but it already has, it's sealed in, it's tight, it's not leaking. So it could be used for, you know, graduation party or whatever the community wants to use it for.
Maybe I'm confused here, but I thought we were looking at the church to look at what the actual structural of the church and what it would take to get the bathrooms up.
Right.
Those kind of things.
And
None of this in the scope deals with the colored school, does it?
And I perhaps confuse the issue as well, because I'm asking you to looking at them separately but combined. So the church is the one that needs, you know, what they did to the colored school, that the feasibility and the structural and the weatherization, that was all done several years ago, and that's kind of what we're looking at for the church is, you know, that comprehensive approach to it. What can it be used for? What will be required for it to be structurally sound? And but yes, and I'll ask you for the same input on the colored school. Do you want us to go ahead and seek quotes for those 4 or 5 items that we've identified as the last item? So I apologize for maybe combining those a little bit, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Do you think that we can get some of those, I guess, questions answered without spending close to 10,000?
I don't know if you could do it for less. It probably could be done in some way, but if you're asking me, I'd say I'd like to hire a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer to come in and actually look at it, making sure that everything can be done compliantly, as efficiently as it can be. I'd want to get a structural engineer to take a look at the geotech report and say, if you want this to be used for this purpose, then this is what we're going to have to do to shore up the foundation. So,
would we need a geotech first?
yeah, that would be one of the first things you would do, yes.
Yeah, that's
And-
what.
And we would typically, we haven't always done it this way, and excuse me, but we haven't always done it this way, but typically the structural will have their own geotech. We certainly have a geotech that we've used, but a lot of times they like to use the person they're comfortable working with, and the cost for that typically doesn't vary too much from that.
If we don't know what's in the ground, there's no way to know how to fix it structurally. So that geotech is something that would need to be done, but I appreciate you putting this part together, because I think we owe it to the church of accepting it, and as I asked you last time, to go ahead and try to set up some kind of dedication or some kind of thank you for the city and the church members dedicating that back to us. And I think we owe that
Absolutely.
to that bunch, and then I think it's in our best interest to at least to see what it would take to put it back into service structurally, and the items that you've listed here in part one. I don't know that we need to move into the architectural side of it yet. Maybe it's just the structural and the mechanics of it. That's just something to throw out there.
Yeah, and I go back and looking at history, we've had the colored school in our possession for the last, 15, 20 years?
Was over to Preservation Lampasas, 6 years ago,
So we've been sitting on it for 6 years, and I'd like to see us move a little bit quicker and have it in use before another 6 years go by. And because I think that's just being a good steward of what we have and what's been passed down to the city.
Absolutely.
What I'm hearing from council is that you would like to have a little more discussion in terms of the end game. What's the vision for everybody for the use of this facility? I think certainly you could, if you want to have us put together a scope to address structural, mechanical, maybe budgets, we can talk about that under the action item. Again, we're not asking you to spend the money tonight. We're asking you to say, okay, go out and find out how much. The other thing that I have heard tonight is that maybe the other conversation that we need to have is, are there ways or phasing that we can do this a little less expensively or and still get it done? Again, I think if you're going to hire an architect and a geotech engineer and then a mechanical engineer, you're probably going to have to pay that much, but certainly we can have that conversation if that's a concern to council.
And the only reason I was even bringing that up is we just got done talking about Fund 40 and how we're trying to pay for other projects, and we're talking about this other
You
project.
bet.
I just don't want to get too much going on at one time and just
Absolutely.
throwing money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other comments?
I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thanks, Finley. Next item is discussion regarding project scope and cost estimates regarding the structural integrity of the rock wall surrounding Hannah Spring and Campbell Park.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm sure this mic's on. It'll be like Jeff and forget to turn my mic on. This particular item is one that I know Council is very familiar with. This is the Campbell Park, Hannah Springs rock wall, and it's one that has some historical bearing. I just wanted to stress that our Parks Department has been very diligent working with contractors as well as Mr. Cabanis to keep this moving. There's been some different items we've discussed as far as fencing. That was the initial where the project kind of began, was safety and making sure this area was fenced off for safety. And so we have received back the lock structural engineer determination, and I highlighted a few things just so everybody's familiar. You know, the proposed option is going to be a 6-foot high wrought iron security fence. That's initially where we started and where we're working towards a final project. The stone wall is approximately 16 inches thick at the top and is approximately 3 foot high above grade. Obviously, that varies depending on what side of the structure you're on. But their opinion was tied strictly to the stone wall and support, because initially the ask was, could we put the support on the existing wall? And so that was where they started, and their response and their opinion is the wall's not suitable to support the column bases of the proposed fence due to the fact that the mortared stone top is considered too loose for proper bolt anchorage, which is typically solid concrete. They've provided some details in the packet, or a detail. There was a second detail that came later that I actually have, but the first detail, oh, you have it? Great, okay. The first detail basically shows the fence being placed outside of the rock wall, 6 foot tall, about a foot away on center from where the existing wall is now is where the post would be put. And so there's quite a few details on that, what would be required to do that. It would be a lesser impact, not actually touching the wall. The other detail shows if council would like to move forward with this option, that it can be placed with some removal of the wall to get it down. It looks like about 18 inches from the 3 foot, go down 18 inches, build it back up, and then also dowel into the old part of the wall with reinforcement steel, and then pour that top cap, which is 18 inches, 16 inches wide, to kind of fit the look of the wall. And we don't necessarily have a cost on that. We did have a cost from Canales Dibble Contractors for $46,515, and that was specific to the direction that we get back if the direction is to remove the wall. That was a quote that we had gotten just to remove the wall, not for the fence. The fence itself, I believe the last quote that Chris Eicher, who's our Parks Director, had received was around $38,000 just for the fence to be placed on the outside and not mounted to the wall. So those are some costs that we're aware of. And I don't know if Mr. Cadmus would like to speak to this. Okay.
So Ryan, did you say to remove the wall, Canales Dibble, did you say 46.5?
Yes, ma'am. And we would have to go out for other quotes. But this is a proposal that they did give us. Obviously, there's other contractors out there that could do this work. I think one of the things I would stress within this proposal is the actual dewatering pumps that would be required. So they would be working from the inside of the spring to take the wall down. There's also some environmental things that they have to do, catch the debris that comes off the wall on the inside. There'd be some netting. So it's a little bit more than just knocking the wall down.
Mr. Cabinet, did you want to speak? Sure.
When I made the proposal to council last fall, when I made the proposal originally last fall on behalf of the Historical Commission and the Museum and LAFTA and Vision Lampasas and some other nonprofits, it was to restore the springs to their historical state based on all legal photos, which would be to remove the later wall that was placed on top of the original foundational wall, containment wall put there by John Hanna in 1878. And then the old photos show a wrought iron fence that's anchored in that low wall. Mm-hmm. And the main part of the proposal was to get rid of that later fence. It was added sometime after 1910, and it was added to keep debris from washing into the spring, because at that time the ground around the spring was flat. So during floods, debris washed in, and Sarah Campbell Scott, I believe, built that fence because she got tired of having to get debris out of the springs. So anyway, it's a much later wall that was put in after the heyday of the springs. But the key element was to remove the wall, because when you remove the wall, you can see the water from all parts of the park, which was how it was originally. And all the old descriptions and everything say that the clear water in the springs was visible from all parts of the park and was the focal point of the park. So that was the key part of our proposal. And we talked to Juan Vidal, who is a master stonemason, and his specialty is working with old limestone walls. He's done the restoration on the Hewling Bean House out southwest of town, which I think is the oldest house in the county, 1855.
What did
I think.
Juan say? So what did he say about the wall over here?
About what Juan did? He gave us a quote of just removing the wall last fall of $6,000 to $7,000, and that was not doing a cap on the lower wall, a concrete cap to stabilize it. And he said that he wouldn't opine as to whether the lower wall was stable enough to anchor the fence in until he could actually see it once the upper wall was gone. But he said that he could keep any debris from falling into the spring. I understand that the city couldn't use him, so I hasn't talked to him because he wasn't bonded. He was bonded, but he has not been doing any projects that required a bond, so because of the expense, the last time he had to be renewed, he didn't renew it. But he is now in the process of renewing it, so he'll have a bond, so can be used. And I'm working with Finley to make sure that the bond satisfies all the requirements the city has. But I went out there with him today and went over it again and showed him where the later wall had been put on the earlier wider wall that appears to have bigger blocks in it, and asked him again, what would your quote be to remove that upper wall, to take it back to the historical condition of just the lower wall. Again, making sure that no big chunks or debris fell into the springs, and then to carry all the debris off from the upper wall. And he thought about it a long time and said that, and building the concrete slab, a concrete cap, stabilizing cap around the lower wall. And he said 9,500, so he's upped it to 9,500 now. But he repaired the stonework at my house, did an excellent job. He can make new stonework look and fit right into the old stonework. He's a master at that. He knows old stone walls. He did the Hewling Bean House. He's worked on the Hart House, the Keystone Hotel, the tasting room in Burnett on the square.
But none of this matters unless he gets bonded, right? None
Correct.
of this matters unless he gets bonded, so.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's in.
Once he gets bonded, then we should talk about
Right,
him, right?
Right. No, but he's good. I'm not sure why the other quote is so much higher than that, but he knows what he's doing. He'd be the best person. If I were doing this myself, I would certainly hire him. Anything involving old limestone, he's the guy. We're flexible on where the fence is placed. If it has to be placed outside, we're okay with that. But the main thing is, please take that wall down, because it makes it, the wall makes it much less safe, because that woman that got in a few years ago couldn't get out because of the wall. If the wall hadn't been there, she could have reached the edge and taken herself out. So it doesn't really keep anybody out, but once people get in, it keeps them from getting out. And it would be historic preservation, restoration, and it would, I think you'd be amazed at how it would change the appearance of the park and the sculpture garden. So I would ask that we come to some resolution that involves taking out that wall, and then the other details after that, we're a lot more flexible on those.
Initially, what we budgeted was $40,000, and now we're looking at $56,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. 70?
Well, Juan is, the proposal for taking the wall out was 46. Right.
Saying like what we have here today, because until he's bonded, that's a non-issue. I mean, once he's bonded, we should talk
He'll
about
be
it.
bonded in the next day or two.
Awesome.
I went with him to the insurance agent, and
'Cause it sounds great, looking at with him, or getting a proposal from him and seeing if we could do it that way. I mean,
right.
And is Dibble the only bid that we got? I mean, did we put that out for bid or just go to Dibble and ask for how much would it cost if we did this?
It has not been out for bid. That was just a proposal. So we would go out most likely for bid.
So kind of where we sit right now, we've almost doubled in cost, more than doubled.
Well, it was
Looking at 88,000 if
88?
Well,
everything comes
if you
together.
factor in Juan's bid of 95, that brings that way down.
Ryan, what about our TML, our insurance on this? Has that been discussed?
I would defer to Manager DeGraffenreid on that. I believe it probably has, but
It has been, they have come out and taken a look at it, and obviously, I think, and Chris, I think, has supplied a letter to you in the past from TML, but if not, we'll get that to you. But I think regardless of the height of the wall, we need a 6-foot fence around it, spaced how 3.5 inches or whatever the slats are, so. And obviously installed to the manufacturer's specification, so, but we can pull that letter for you as well.
Good.
Ryan, was these two proposals that we've got here are not proposals? The actual structural engineers, they're not proposals, and let me clear that up. But the drawings that they have, does this, if I'm reading it right, does this include removing the wall or leaving the wall in place?
well, there's actually two proposals, or again, not proposals, but structural details. The first one has it basically leaving the wall in place. The first one is just putting a fence on the outside, but the second one is, it is taking the wall down to, it looks like 18 inches, because there's a few dimensions that I needed from grade up, but 18 inches, it looks like thereabouts is what they would remove, still leaving some of the old wall there is, you know, above the finished
You
grade.
still got 3 foot of old wall.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
and it's-
what was that?
Yeah, the 3-foot piece is the new wall that exists out there today.
But didn't we see that the old wall is pretty crumbly and it's not mortared? It's just laying on top of one stone on top of another?
Yes.
Yeah, and how tall is the existing wall that he's wanting to remove? Make sure I'm clear. How much is he talking about removing?
Mr. Cabnis or the structural engineer?
No, how much is he talking about removing?
I think the intent was to take the 3-foot away, that the newer part of the wall, removing that 3 foot, and then putting a concrete cap on it, I believe, was to stabilize it.
And so you're proposing to bring it down 3 feet?
Yes, yeah. If you go out there, you can see where the new wall is plopped down on the old one. The top
Yeah.
here, the old foundational wall, put there in 1878, are fairly large stones. And then underneath it, it's kind of a rubble wall. So it probably would not be stable enough. And the engineer, I think, has opined it wouldn't be stable enough to anchor the wall in. But we're perfectly fine putting the wall, or putting the fence outside the foundational wall.
So to remove the old wall that's there, is it Juan? How does he propose getting it down without the debris falling into the water? How do we get that done?
He's going to start on, he said that very likely it's that most walls, he thinks that the upper wall is a two-layer wall, and he's going to start in the outer layer and remove it very carefully. So just have the inner layer, and then it'll be a lot easier to remove inward without the danger of anything falling into the spring.
And how deep is that pool?
It's about, if you're standing in it, because when we cleaned it out last time, if I stand by in the pool, by the wall, the water comes from about here.
Any other questions?
I'm still confused.
I did have one more question, and it's for, well, I mean, for Oldham, because they're the ones that are doing the fence. Are they comfortable with either of the things, or were they more comfortable with the fence on the outside? Or did we not know
I
that?
believe the fence on the outside is what last time we met and discussed with them. I'm not sure that they've looked into, because this is the first time we'd seen the detail where you could actually mount it to the top of the wall. In the past, we've been talking about the fence outside of the wall, and so I know where we left off last time was there. I don't know that.
And that's the
they've given
most
us a
important
price.
aspect, right, is getting the fence up for safety reasons?
Right.
If I'm looking at that drawing correctly, Ryan, we've got 5 foot 8 inches. And this drawing is proposing to take it finished grade down to what's drawn on here is finished grade, which would remove about 3 foot of the wall. So the existing wall would still be about 2 foot 8 inches tall.
Yeah, the new existing wall, I think you're pretty close, because I'm missing that dimension from finished grade up, but they are taking it down because the 5 foot 8 is what exists today. So if you come down that 18 inches, that's about half of what the wall is. So they're basically taking half of the new wall down out of that 3 foot. They're leaving about 18 inches there, it looks like, and then they're doweling into that with rebar and then pouring concrete up 18 inches. So I believe, if I could, just to clarify, so I think we have 3 options on the table. The first would be put up the fence, leave the wall intact, don't touch that. I think the second one is, remove the upper wall, that 3 foot totally, and still put the fence on the outside of the wall, because the structural detail doesn't account for that if we took it all the way down. Or the third option is this last structural detail, which is take basically half of the new wall down, come down 18 inches, pour a new concrete, and we can bolt into that for the fence.
And I
So
guess
can you-
Those are 3
Then I-
options.
Can you go over the cost? I know you don't know the exact, but we're looking at 40,000, let's just say 40, just to put the fence up,
That's
without
correct.
doing anything to the wall.
That's
We're looking
correct,
at
ma'am.
Mr. Juan to take down the wall for 10,000. So we could take down that part of the wall and put the fence up for 50,000.
so,
Yes,
so
Mayor.
structurally.
Then the other one is going to be like 88,000. So that's some background information for what you want to.
Possibly more. If you went with the third option, to structurally dowel in and do what you're gonna have to do with this concrete cap, I would think it would be above that even, probably. Just guessing.
Is
Above
is
the
the
88?
third option what they're recommending, the structural engineers?
Yes, so it would be the structural engineer that gave us an alternative, so that third one is just an alternative if council sees fit to go forward with that one. But there's basically, those 3 options are on the table.
But 2 out of the
direction.
3, the engineer is recommending, right?
They're not recommending, they just proposed it. It's up to y'all to decide which one you want.
Well, I'm not gonna do anything that the structural engineer doesn't approve of.
All he's saying is that that the wall is not safe to put the fence on at this point. So that's all he's saying. That's the safest.
Mayor and council, if I might just add that we're kind of throwing numbers around and speculating to a certain extent based on some estimates, but anything we do related to this type of work, we would have to follow our procurement policy and make sure that it was competitively procured. If it's lower than a certain amount, then we can certainly do that in different means. But I guess I would ask you tonight not to pick a certain way to go, but allow us at least another couple of weeks to firm up some quotations so that we can bring you a little bit sharper information.
I want to make sure that I'm comfortable, that the structural engineer is comfortable with what we're doing. The last thing I want to see us do is something that occurs that damages that set of springs.
Are there other comments, you guys down there? Have something?
Yeah, I'm good.
Are we all good? Mr. Kavanaugh, did you have anything else you wanted to let us know?
No, I think that's everything.
Okay.
Want to be bonded this week.
And you will discuss with Finley all of that?
And TJ, I'm sorry, I had just one more question. How much do we pay for this structural engineering? And what budget did that come out of? Just curious.
Council provided authorization for staff to seek engineering validation as well as clarification.
Right.
I capped that at 10,000. I don't think we've even come close to that yet.
Okay.
But there was a authorization from council
no,
that
I-
provided some
yeah.
latitude for that.
No,
Yes.
I remember that. I was just curious how much it cost.
Just to clarify, I'm not sure we've been invoiced yet. I'm sure there was a, proposal or an idea of what it would be, but I haven't seen the invoice.
It was an hourly, so it
Okay.
was not, it was based on a scope as you guys have been discussing in terms of the structural integrity of the wall, where we could place that fence. If we place that fence, how would we have to, what sort of foundation would be required? He did come out and do an investigation, but we have not been invoiced, but it is
Okay.
it is a per hour contract.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I would say it's probably safe to say, looking at some of the details, that, he has spent some time on the ground, and then spent a little bit of time on the details as well, but not, a formal design. So this, I can't speak for how many hours that took him to do, but it would be minimal.
Okay. Thank y'all.
Anything else? Thank you both.
Thank you.
Next item is discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Does anyone want to speak to the agenda? Do we need a break? Break? No?
I'm good.
Okay, we'll just go on into the regular session. If someone will adjourn the workshop.
So moved. During the workshop. Oh, second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chief Cummins, would you please lead us in prayer?
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this fine group of people that have gathered here tonight in this great facility to do the city's work, which is ultimately your work. We ask that there'll be great communications both ways and good decisions can be made for the ultimate benefit of all. We want to ask that you be with everyone in all the troubles in the world, near and far, and specifically with our people in Ukraine on both sides of the conflict, and that you might bring peace sooner than later. We ask you to forgive us of our sins, be with us in safety till we can meet again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me in the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Happy birthday, Jody Cummins.
We do have a couple of proclamations today. The first one is Denim Day Proclamation. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Kim Kankel, and I'm the Volunteer and Development Manager for the Highland Lakes Family Crisis Center. And thank you for allowing me to come speak to you tonight in regards to Denim Day and the history behind it. Denim Day grew out of a 1998 Italian Supreme Court decision that overturned a rape conviction because a victim wore tight jeans. An 18-year-old girl is picked up by her 45-year-old married driving instructor for her very first lesson. He takes her to an isolated road, pulls her out of the car, wrestles her out of one leg of her jeans, and forcefully rapes her. Threatened with the death if she tells anyone, he makes her drive home. Later that night, she does tell her parents, and they help and support her to press the charges. The petitioner is arrested, he is prosecuted, and convicted of rape and sentenced to jail. He appeals the sentence, and the case makes its way all the way to the Italian Supreme Court. Within a matter of days, the case against the driving instructor is overturned, dismissed, and the perpetrator is released. In a statement, the chief judge argued, because the victim wore very, very tight jeans, she had to have helped him remove the jeans. In that instance, it is considered consensual sex and no longer rape. Enraged with the verdict, and within a matter of hours, the women in the Italian parliament launched into immediate action and protested by wearing jeans to work. This call to action motivated and emboldened the California Senate and Assembly to do the same. People all over the world were outraged, and wearing jeans became an international symbol of protest against the destructive attitudes and myths surrounding sexual assault. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Sexual violence is difficult to discuss and often goes unmentioned. 1 in 5 American women and 1 in 33 American men have been raped at some time in their lives. And young people, unfortunately, are at the highest risk. It is estimated that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will have some unwanted or abusive sexual experience at some point in their childhood. Our mission at the Highland Lakes Family Crisis Center is to be an advocate for these sexual assault victims, to give them a voice that has been silenced. We hope that you will join us in the answer to call to action on April the 27th. Wear your jeans, show your support to survivors. I have given you information not only about Denim Day, but also about the Highland Lakes Family Crisis Center. If you have any questions, I will be very happy to answer them. We are a 24/7 facility, and we are here to serve you and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll read the proclamation. A proclamation to designate April 27th, 2022 as Denim Day. Whereas the month of April is National Sexual Assault Awareness Month, calling attention to the fact that sexual assault and harassment is widespread and harms our community. And whereas every 2 minutes, someone in America is sexually assaulted, and approximately 1 in 5 women and 1 in 33 men are raped during their lifetime, and about 75% of harassment victims experience retaliation when they report it. And whereas the Denim Day movement is a worldwide effort that started as a grassroots protest against an Italian Supreme Court decision in which a sexual assault conviction was overturned because the victim was wearing tight jeans at the time of the attack. And whereas Denim Day encourages everyone to stand in solidarity with survivors of sexual violence and speak up when they hear comments that blame victims or make light of sexual harassment and assault. And whereas together we can change how we think and talk about the issue, we can create a culture of respect, equality, and safety for our citizens. And whereas with proper education on the matter and comprehensive prevention projects, sexual violence and its unfair and traumatizing effects are preventable. Whereas the City of Lampasas strongly supports the Highland Lakes Family Crisis Center and their efforts to heal victims, educate and train the community, and stop sexual violence before it starts. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Lampasas does hereby proclaim Wednesday, April 27th, 2022 as Denim Day, and urges the community members to wear jeans on Denim Day and to help spread the awareness about the physical and emotional trauma that accompanies sexual assault, and to show our support to survivors in our community. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Our next proclamation is Do You See Me? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm a little bit ill-prepared, but I appreciate everybody here and on the board, and especially TJ May. All right, appreciate you very much. All right. What I'm going to say is that the Do You See Me Now is a program that we started back in 2011. There was a group of us that decided, you know, we got just too many people dying on the road in motorcycle accidents. Just to give you a little bit more background, I'm also a member of the Texas Motorcycle Safety Coalition under TxDOT and the Texas A&M Institute of Transportation. And we do study the curves in the state of Texas, plus look at statistics. I just attended a forum this past Saturday down in Kerrville. The statistics are overwhelming. And it's just time that we just need to all be aware. And it's not just motorcycles, it's just not drivers. That's what everybody assumes. But the old standard, well, I didn't see him. Well, that's because of a lot of our education, our driver's ed classes and things like that. If you think back about, I'm not going to tell you how long ago it was when I took a driver's license, but, you know, that wasn't covered at all. We were talking about cars and trucks and things like that. And motorcycles were never mentioned. Well, I've been riding motorcycles since I was 11 years old. And I just turned 35 yesterday. I'm just kidding. He didn't even hear me. But no, but yeah, anyways, I've been riding for motorcycles for a very long time, and I enjoy it. And it's just like one old boy confronted me about his horse, and I said, well, we just ride a different type of stallion. I ride steel stallion. You got a stallion that you got to feed. So anyways, the bottom line is that the month of May by the U.S. Department of Transportation is designated as Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month. It's not just a day, but it's a month. That is carried into the Texas Department of Transportation, which we have programs that's called Look, Learn, and Live, Share the Road, goes on and on. So basically, I support all those. And I would ask, and I appreciate it very much, that the city, I have got to give Lampasas a thumbs up. That's just my expression, but I have to commend and thank you very, very, very much. Not just a one much, a very, very much. I have a lot of respect here, and the people that know me, I don't pull punches. I tell it like it is. So that's about it. If anybody got any questions, I'll be more than try to answer them.
When are you coming to Lampasas?
Oh, yes. Okay. On the 24th of April, that is a Sunday, but it'll be in the afternoon. For the last 12 years, it was always designated the first or the last Sunday in the month of April, right before May. So whatever day that falls on, and this year is going to be the 24th of April. And what we are Our starting point will be in Temple. We at a motorcycle place called Bell County Motor Works. If y'all been around here for a long time, remember the Clean Power Sports in Killeen? Well, they shut down and moved Temple, took over the old Luby's Cafe, and opened up a motorcycle shop there for Indian motorcycles. But anyways, we'll start there, and then we'll have some festivities there. The Mayor Temple is coming, and I've got some invitations for some other people to come. I don't think Governor Abbott's going to be able to make it. But I tried. I knocked on his door. But, and then I do a lot of coordination, and all the DPS, Department of Public Safety, sheriff's offices for the counties of Bell, Correll, and Lampasas, and all the police departments between Temple to Lampasas. That's my personal thing. I've got a little background there, but I want to make sure my rule of thumb is 0 accidents. And right now, I can sit here at this podium and say, for 16 years, we've had 0 accidents. I forgot. I'm also the chairman for the Tri-County Toy Run. So this is both. And I say I hold the same philosophy for both, 0 accidents. And all the PDs and the SOs and the DPS, they're all on the same wavelength. Nobody wants to hear about any accidents whatsoever. But we will end up in the parking lot at the Lampasas High School, the parking lot. And it's about one of the few areas that we could meet because I've got so many people. And the thing that I like to push is that I'd like to work with the Chamber of Commerce to push it out to the city, the businesses within the city, because each one of those people on that motorcycle, they represent about $50 as a rule of thumb for the revenue for the city. Now, that's just a tidbit there, and you can check that out anywhere you want to go. So I think it's a positive thing. Lampasas, like I said, I cannot say any more than good things and support that this city has provided.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming. I will read the proclamation. Whereas the month of May marks the traditional start of motorcycle riding season when more riders take to our roadways. Whereas Motorcycle Awareness Month is observed each May as a call to action for motorists to increase their cognizance of motorcycles in order to ensure the safety of their riders. Whereas motorcyclists are more vulnerable than other motorists and are much more likely to be injured or killed in a crash than other vehicle drivers. Whereas over 2/3 of car motorcycle crashes and nearly 1/2 of all motorcycle crashes are caused by car drivers, making motorcycle awareness paramount to safety. Whereas it is a responsibility of all who put themselves behind the wheel to be aware of motorcyclists and to regard them with the same respect as any other vehicle traveling our roadways. Whereas campaigns like Do You See Me Now motorcycle safety and awareness programs serve to inform both riders and motorists about motorcycle safety issues in an effort to reduce motorcycle-related risk, injuries, and fatalities through a comprehensive approach to motorcycle safety. Whereas the City of Lampasas urges all residents to use this month to increase personal awareness of motorcycles while operating a vehicle and to recognize the importance of your actions in the safety of motorcyclists. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Lampasas does hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Motorcycle Awareness Month. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much.
Next item is public hearing for citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the City Council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. the city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item.
Testing.
I'm sorry, Becky, I didn't hear her name.
Actually, it's Rennie like Penny. Okay. I'd like to address the mayor, the council, and also the police chief about some public safety issues in Lampasas. One of them is I live in Pecan Creek Village Apartments, and the back of the buildings are right on the edge of the creek. My management tells me that it's city property right along the edge of the creek. Since I've lived in my unit, I know of 4 residents who have gone over the side. We're elderly, some have dementia, Alzheimer's, other mental health issues, and there's nothing there to keep anybody from going over. And so that's one issue that I want to address. Why can't a railing be put up along the side of the creek behind our buildings? And then the second one I want to address is the intersection of Western and 4th Street. Why is there not a traffic light there?
And you do understand we're not allowed to address these issues.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, those are my 2 things. I don't know what the next step is in pursuing getting a railing at the apartments
So
or...
perhaps the city manager, the assistant city manager can help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor and council.
Thank you.
Randy, we'd be happy to look into that. We'll look into it.
Thank you for coming. The next item is any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included on the agenda. Moving on, we have discussion and possible action concerning approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on March 28th, 2022.
I didn't see any changes, recommend approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda consists of 2 items. Discussion and possible action regarding purchases and charges in excess of $4,000 from March 1 to March 31, 2022. Discussion and possible action regarding February 2022 investment report. Does anyone wish to pull either of those?
I recommend approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no board reports tonight. How about routine matters, city manager's operational report?
Mayor and council, just a few brief comments. This will follow the memorandum that is included in your packet. Sales tax, we continue to see not only locally but statewide double-digit increases for the city for the month of April. Increase was about 17.74%. Year-to-date receipts show an increase of about 14.6% over previous year. You may have seen in Mandy's reporting that we have had the pre-construction meeting for the Lampasas Economic Development Corporation's Phase 1 development of the business park. As a reminder, that includes water, sewer, roadway, drainage. A number of fairly normal agenda items were included in that pre-con, included signage, safety, submittals, et cetera. The notice to proceed was issued, I believe. That was issued, correct? Issued for April 11th. You should be starting to see some mobilization going on at the site, and as just a reminder, that project represents one of the largest public works projects that we've had for quite some time.
Does the dozer that was working out there today have anything to do with any of that?
There was someone who has volunteered to take down under agreement the railing, the roping arena, so that's a separate item that's not included in the contractor scope.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. A couple of items related to, again, these kind of also follow up with a conversation we had previously on Fund 40 projects. Pavilion, we have begin to see some erection going on out there. They have waited to go vertical to do some prefab on the ground, and I believe if they have not gone vertical today, they should be standing up columns tomorrow. So we'll continue to monitor that and look for hopefully the vertical construction to be done within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Skate park, we did receive an update call that is a reminder. They did have an on-site public engagement meeting at the hostess house on the skate park to talk about conceptual design. As a follow-up to that, we did get a workshop summary and responses to online and in-person surveys. And I think the one thing that I mentioned in the previous workshop item is that because of not only geotech and the technical guidance that was provided by that document, but it also included some connection and some hardscaping to existing facilities. It was really outside of their scope. They estimated that if they were to do some of the additional costs, it would be on the order of $170,000. Certainly, we feel like the cost could possibly be reduced if we contracted that, and that's actually at the, they would prefer that. And certainly if they were to contract it, they would take a piece of that as well in terms of that cost. And as a reminder, I'd like to let council know that your contract for the skate park, I think, it has a lot of protection for the city. So in the event that you at some time, and I'm not suggesting that time is now, you wanted to cancel that and pay for work done to this point, you certainly have that option. That's not my suggestion or advice. I think we want to go ahead and do our due diligence and see what we can do that pad for here, as well as the hardscaping. But that certainly is a reminder of what that contract says. The 2 conceptual renderings are included in your packet along with that estimate. Fort Hood, we want to...
Finley, can I stop you real quick?
Yes, sir.
So on that, and just to make sure I'm clear, so we're at about 300,000 on that, and then, and I know we can cut some costs there with like locals and whatnot, but, so then that price would be around 400, like $500,000 essentially for that skate park?
Were it to be 170,000, as well as were their final construction be that, it would be 470, correct?
Cool, okay.
And didn't we originally vote for like 200?
No.
We originally voted for 3?
Correct. The contract is a not to exceed 3. And you could get a $300,000 skate park there. But it wouldn't be 5,000 square feet, obviously, and that sort of thing. So again, we're about $8,000 into the public engagement and design phase at this point. I think it would make sense for us to go ahead and see what we can do in terms of getting locals to do the pad and the extensions to existing facility part, as well as the hardscaping, and then take a look at it at that point. But I want to let council know you certainly, the way that contract is written is that there are also protections for the city as well. Fort Hood, wanted to express thanks to Clay Harrington. He's our Lampasas representative of the Heart of Texas Defense Alliance for coordinating the recent briefing and tour of Fort Hood. I thought that was very helpful. We did get a good briefing by Garrison Commander Chad Foster, as well as participated in some of the flight simulation and orientation there. We also wish to express our thanks to Sergeant Davis, who acted as our onboard tour guide. Did a great job for us. And just as a reminder, the city partners with the 89th MP Battalion for mutual support, and we hope to strengthen that relationship in the coming months. Hostess House is, again, we talked about this briefly with the Fund 40 projects. You probably noticed through social media notifications, et cetera, that The structural remediation has been advertised for bid. It is been copied over into 59 plan rooms and also digitally picked up by 9 general contractors and 4 subcontractors. We will have a pre-bid scheduled for April 19th with bid openings April 26th, and council may consider an award on or about May 9th for that project. That would represent the first phase of the Hostess House project. Also wanted to let you know we are looking into some human resource software. This is an item that has been identified through the CIP program and schedule. It's a way to streamline, hopefully, some of the functions of our finance and human resource departments. Hopefully, really what I want to get to is I don't want to sign as high a stack of papers as I sign every payroll and for every time off request and that sort of thing. So this is kind of a selfish, but I think a well-needed upgrade in terms of our processing. Court of Appeals, again, we did communicate this to you previously, but we're very pleased that Justice Palafax issued a denial to Central Texas Water for their request for a rehearing. That rehearing was based on the 8th Court of Appeals determination that affirming the 169th District Court's decision in favor of Kempner and the City of Lampasas. As a reminder, Central Texas Water was attempting to change the billing methodology within their contracts, which affects how much we pay for operating and maintenance expense. I think the opinion strongly affirmed the plain language of the contract cannot be rewritten or interpreted contrary to accepted language as Central Texas sought. Based on, and of course we have a member that sits on that board, and there's been no communication from Central Texas regarding this decision, so I don't know when they're going to let their members know about this decision, but probably at the next in-person board meeting. But we're very pleased with that decision. I think it's very strong, and if you care for a copy of the opinion, I'd be happy to get that to you. Right-of-way appraisal, the city has acknowledged receipt of the appraisal from Lone Star Right-of-Way Services on behalf of TxDOT. This is for that relatively long and thin piece of property that runs from the assisted living to Alfredo's restaurant. It's basically Creek Bank at that point. It's about 12,000, a little over 12,000 square feet parcel adjacent to 281. Although we have acknowledged receipt of the appraisal, we have not signed off on anything. At this point, we're still working with one property owner regarding an easement through there to make sure they're satisfactory with it at this point. I think all of the questions have been answered, but we'll give it some time and make sure everything is to everyone's satisfaction. As a reminder, council did provide authority to finalize that. Certainly, if something comes up that's strange or out of the blue, I'll bring it back to you and place it on a future agenda if necessary. Rating call, we did participate in the rating call on April 5th. That's with Standard & Poor's related to our potential CO issuance. S&P asked us questions about the local economic outlook, the financial performance of the city, and in particular our utilities, and also asked us a couple of questions that relate, frankly, to the event that we went through, Winter Storm Uri, which I think we answered everything satisfactorily. We will be looking for a rating from them on or about April 15th. Our financial advisor did suggest that based on current volatility in the market and world events, rating upgrades are unlikely, but at the same time, Jennifer also said she did not anticipate a downgrade. I think we positioned the city very well, and I think that is due in large part by what our city council has done over many, many years in terms of making sure that they're financially stable and dealing with issues that need to be dealt with, but also being fiscally conservative. Somewhat related, we will be putting together a mid-year report to you as soon as we can make sure all our bank statements are reconciled and all our APs are booked, or at least a majority of them are booked. We want to take a look at the first 6 months in terms of our financial performance, not because we think there are any issues. In fact, we think we're probably tracking ahead of schedule. But we would like to also use this as an opportunity to say, if we do have some options or things that council may want to begin to consider related to budget or accelerated purchases or anything like that, we'd want to at least be able to, not necessarily have you pull the trigger on anything, but provide you an outlook in terms of where we stand mid-year and where we anticipate being at the end of the year. So hopefully sometime here in the next meeting or two, we'll deliver that to you. CIP, we met on March 31st. We did discuss kind of the schedules and things that we normally do, the capital project schedule, the funding statement, priority definitions. We will continue to formalize that plan. I think one thing that was very productive that came out of the meeting is one of the members of the committee said, hey, can we have another column on our comprehensive plan projects that relate, or excuse me, on the capital projects that relate to our, how does this project relate to anything on our comprehensive plan, which is exactly what we want to do all the time, relate everything back to the plan. So we'll be working on that and formalizing that. That's what I have to report to you this evening. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. Going forward, we have no unfinished business, new business. Discussion and possible action regarding the Morris Cedar Break minor plat.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the Morris Homestead is 7.67 acres, and they want to subdivide 1.47 acres of that into a separate tract. Typically, something like this would be done administratively, but because the 1.47 acres will need to have electric extended to that property, we had to bring it before the Planning Commission. So we did that at our meeting on Thursday. They did recommend approval to council this evening. And that, if you have any questions, I do have Mr. Morris here as well.
I'd consider a motion to approve the Morris Cedar minor plat, and then we can ask questions.
I'll second.
Who made the motion?
Motion to approve.
Bob made the motion and Kathy seconded. Are there questions now?
I had some earlier, but I've bothered Becky this morning, and there's an 8-inch water line out there, and we'll be extending electric into the site, maybe one pole, according to Finley. Won't be very far. They've not asked us to participate, so I'm assuming they'll pay all costs.
At this time, we haven't discussed any development of that property, but if we do, it'll go through the Public Works Department as well.
Any other questions or comments? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is discussion and possible action regarding the estates of Gibson Branch preliminary plat.
Mayor and Council, this is 187 acres, as you can see. There's actually going to be 52 lots. 50 of them are actually designated as single-family homes on a little over 2 acres. There are 2 lots that are available that are not available, but they're taken with over 30 acres each. It is in our ETJ with proximity to the airport. We do not provide any utilities whatsoever to this property. It does come from Corex for water, and it comes from Hamilton Electric for the electric services. It will be on well and septic out there, I believe. We have spoken with Mr. Brown, who is the developer, to go ahead and talk to about the no-fly zone because it is in proximity to our airport, which is a requirement. They will have a homeowners association as well as deed restrictions that they have set forth with an attorney out of Goldthwaite. So they are made sure that all that has been accounted for. Once those have been completed, I will get a copy of those as well. But there will be no conveyance to the city or the county as we know today. As far as any maintenance of the streets or anything. But they are working with Commissioner Rainwater to make sure that the streets do meet their requirements, and we have met with the fire marshal to make sure the access out there is acceptable for fire service.
Move to approve the preliminary plat.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
7.3, discussion and possible action regarding the Cardinal Encode integration and purchase of computer software titled Citation Issuing Device Third-Party Interface that will allow the police department's badge CAD computer software to digitally upload citation information to the municipal court's Encode computer software. Sir?
Mayor and council, if you'll recall, over about the last year and a half, we've been implementing a CAD project, computer-aided dispatch. This is primarily paid for out of last year's budget and is almost complete. It is an extension of our long-existing badge reporting system. Lots of bells and whistles. It does a lot of good things for us. One of the greatest things it does, though, is our citation module. When the officers in the field can issue citations digitally, uploads the information through the cloud, and it's stored off-site, no longer at the police department. It'll print a physical copy of that citation, and they'll bring it back to the office, but all the information has already been uploaded, so our dispatchers no longer have to sit there and type in that information off of those citations. The last piece of this puzzle would be to be able to do that at municipal court, so they no longer have to hand type that information off of those citations, and that's what we're talking about. A piece of software that'll be a complement to the Encode software at municipal court that'll allow that information to come right in from the cloud and into their system, so they don't have to hand type those citations in there any longer. It costs $4,000, and then there's a $250 project fee one time, and then there'll be a $1,000 yearly maintenance fee. And though we'll implement this in the middle of this year, they will prorate back what we don't use once we actually get it installed. And I think that sums it up right there.
If we could get a motion, then we'll ask questions.
We move to recommend purchasing citation issuing devices, third-party interface from Tyler Technologies, the amount not to exceed $6,000.
I have a motion and a second. Are there questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
7.4, discussion and possible action regarding the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funding project review and direction to submit report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to close up a couple of things that have been before you previously. We're going to discuss the, as you said, the Rescue Plan Act and what we've come up with as far as what we're going to use this funding for. We can go back through and cover the amount of money that's been funded to the city of Lampasas. We received we've received one payment so far in August of 21, and we'll receive a second payment in August of 22. We will be using those for a couple of different projects in the city. One of the most known right now would be the economic development of the business park. But I wanted to go over a few other things with you on that. Following up on that, we've got the wastewater extension. That's the upper pressure plane in the business park. We've got the looping of projects. That's Samick, 2nd Street, 5th Street, 7th Street. A wastewater extension, relocation of Highway 281 South. An emergency generator for critical infrastructure. That would be during the water department. And then also the balance of the fire department apparatus. That totals up to $1,967,374. So coming before you tonight, we're trying to get some discussion on this and approval of this because we need to go before and enter all this into a website that tells the government, hey, we've got this money and this is what we intend to do with it. So out of this, we'd like for you to consider a motion to authorize staff to prepare and issue an interim report regarding the use of the ARPA funds so that we can make those entries. And I would like that tonight simply because it's due at the end of April and I'm the one responsible for doing that. And I don't want to have to do it on a Tuesday morning and hope it all gets there.
We need a motion.
I make a motion to consider a motion to authorize staff to prepare and issue interim report regarding the use of ARPA funds as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7.5, discussion and possible action to direct staff to seek proposals for data collection and assessment services related to wastewater interceptors.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council. This particular item, if I could, if you'd allow me to give you a little bit of background about our wastewater interceptor capacity analysis, I'll just do a brief synopsis to give you a little bit of background before we step forward into the data collection aspect and testing of our sewer system. So we received a final capacity analysis from Eckerman Engineering on March 21st. There was a couple items made note. And to give you a little bit of background on what the scope was, it was to determine the approximate average and peak daily wastewater flows. Average daily wastewater flow has been estimated in this solution that the engineers come up with. So basically, to quantify the various flows and to anticipate certain peak times of the year on some of these sewer interceptors, there were certain formulas used to come up with those numbers. So not all numbers are a definitive, and that's where we'll move into getting direction to go ahead and scope out a proposal. The peaking factor in this particular study was calculated by dividing the hour flow by the average daily flow. So basically, they're looking at the one peak hour over a 24-hour period. There was a basic minimal survey that was limited that was performed for 60 wastewater manholes. The survey data collected on these manholes included horizontal location, top of the rim of the manhole, elevation, flow line, as best they could get down to the flow line on some of these, and then the manhole size and the pipe sizing. So those types of things were taken into account, very minimal level, to come up with some quantification for the engineer's assessment. And there was, to make note, there was actually 3 instances where it was brought to our attention based on the numbers calculated, and I'll refer back to that again as these are estimated numbers for peak flows. There was 3 different segments that were based on engineering design that were over 100%, and that's a worst case scenario type of flow. And those, again, are an estimate. Typically, when you see an event like that, you would see the manhole failing. You know, the sewer would come through the manhole. We haven't had any of those incidents. Again, you know, with it being an estimated calculation. But it's something that helps us define where we're going next to make sure that we can address the things within a next step study to look at into more detail. And so I think with those items, the recommendation was to go ahead from the engineer to move forward with the ones that were specifically identified. Typically, when you're on, you're designing for those type of flows, it's 75% max capacity of that pipe, that sewer pipe. And so, what we would like to do is moving forward with direction to go out for either proposals or to use a contractor that has already procured those services. So smoke testing, flow for infiltration, which is basically when water comes into those sewer pipes during a rain event, it could be coming through somebody's clean out in their yard, and the water's getting into that and then overloading those sewer pipes. And so it's looking for things like that. Our identified 3 different interceptors are the ones we would like to start with. There's various types of data collection that go along with that. As Eckerman Engineering mentioned, they would actually collect the manhole on those interceptors. So every manhole, they get a digital picture all the way down into the manhole to make sure there's not infiltration coming in from the manhole as well as the pipe. So it would look at those types of things. We would get a finalized GIS file that we would then upload into our GIS system that we maintain, and it gives us results to see, does the pipe need to be upsized based on, the infiltration or water getting in from outside, or is that really the cause and we need to focus on maintenance on those certain sections of pipe? And so that will help us going forward if we can, you know, go out for a proposal or use some sort of buy board HGAC contract. And I'll stand for any questions.
I would make a motion to direct staff in consultation with the modeling engineer to seek proposal for the collection and assessment of identified interceptors, including smoke testing and flows, to determine the potential project. And I say move quickly.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there questions or comments?
Maybe if you start this, it'll rain.
Right. Well, that is one of the critical factors this time of year, because the testing and the monitors they put on those manholes,
It was a
you're
joke.
going to only see those peak flows, you know, in rain events. So, you know, the sooner we could go out, the better. for that type of
Let's
test.
pray for a rain event then. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
7.6, discussion and possible action to direct staff to seek design proposals for Live Oak Water Line Extension and Pecan Street Sewer Line Replacement.
Mayor, council, these are two projects that are fairly direct. One is a water line, which is Live Oak. It's a looping project that goes from North Avenue to Second. The intent would be to place the water line on the west side of Live Oak to make that connection. And in that, there could be possible easements we might need. We would need to look a little bit more into that as far as what property exists now for the right-of-way of the road versus what we would need and the location of where that water line would need to be placed to be tied in. That one, and then the other project that we would like to go out for scope or preliminary engineering on is the Pecan Street 8-inch sewer main project. There's proposed development around the intersection of Pecan and 8th Street that kind of brings this to light where we need to upsize the sewer line. It would be an 8-inch, and it would basically begin at the intersection of Live Oak and 8th, and then it would head east until it intersected Pecan, and then basically north up Pecan a little past 7th where it would make the connection.
Move to direct staff to solicit design proposals, including construction phase scope for future consideration by the council for Live Oak Water Loop and Pecan Street sewer line replacement.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there questions, comments?
I just have one. We're gonna bring this back, the proposals, right?
Yes, this is
What you're
only
asking
giving
me to
staff the green light to go out and seek the proposals. Council would consider the proposals at a future meeting.
You'll negotiate for the consulting engineer, whichever one you pick.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
7.7, discussion and possible action regarding the draft project scope for the New Hope Baptist Church and the Historic Colored School, and direction to staff to seek related proposals and quotations for council consideration.
Mayor and council, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to attempt to summarize our workshop conversation. I think what staff heard was that you'd like a discussion at a future planning session regarding the vision for use. We might actually bring someone in to assist with that have had some experience with that sort of facility and what has been used in other municipalities or other jurisdictions. At council's comfort level, and this is something that maybe we're not even looking for tonight, we would discuss with you seeking proposal for structural and MEP, and also with the understanding you would want staff to seek opportunities for cost savings if we could limit that scope to some place at council's comfort level. The other item that I think was also maybe indirectly referenced is that, you know, how to identify possible funding sources for this. This may be an FY23 project, but certainly I think those are some things that we would want the opportunity to work on and bring back to you. So we'd certainly be interested in whatever council direction is on this item. Does that sound right, I guess?
Yeah.
I consider a motion. No?
Mayor and council, I think I can take your conversation as direction that we need to do a little more spade work and bring some additional work back to you if that's, so if you don't make any motion, we're going to go along this
I'm
path
good with that.
unless you tell me otherwise.
So we're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks.
That was helpful.
7.8, discuss and consider the selection of a winner of the website photo.
I'd like to move to choose photo number 1.
Second.
You can see the second one too.
I'm in agreement with that.
Is there another photo?
There is a second one, yes.
You moved on too.
We have a motion for photo 1 and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
7.9,
Aye.
7.9, discussion and consideration regarding membership in the Text 21 Coalition.
Mayor and council, recently the assistant city manager and I attended a Zoom meeting by Text 21 at the invitation of the Temple Mayor Davis and Keith Sled from HODA, the executive director. And I think their underlying theme was to try to get a little more representation west of Killeen on this coalition building group. It is a 501c3. They do advocate for transportation policy in Texas, not just the I-14 corridor, although that's one of the hot buttons that they're currently dealing with. The annual dues for this group is $2,500, and I believe it would probably provide us a seat at the table and probably a better and more timely dissemination of information at that level. And it is something that's not specifically budgeted for. However, within the street department, certainly we've got $2,500 that we can find somewhere. So I would, I guess, be staff's recommendation, you'd consider a motion to approve the annual membership to Text 21 in the amount of $2,500. Certainly, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I would move to approve a motion for us to join the Texas 21 first year annual dues, $2,500.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any questions of Finley?
Finley, you think this is a pretty good idea to get that seat at the table?
I think,
Worth it?
particularly for the cost, I think there's value in being included in this group, yes. I think the other thing they advocate for that you probably saw is they're really trying to advocate for more port development. Councilman Pierce, correct me if I'm wrong, but the cheapest way to ship something is on these huge ships. You can, the next cheapest way to ship something is on a train car. After that, it's a truck. And so if we can start to develop some of our port assets, then that is a spinoff. Then you get more trains going with supplies instead of them having to, wait at Long Beach or go all the way around to the East Coast. Texas is really kind of in the middle of the South of the United States, so they're trying to advocate along those lines as well, which I think it's a good idea.
I certainly think with us, the city, I-14 will eventually affect us, and we've made, in our master plan, acknowledged that that's going to happen one day, and we're moving transportation in that direction.
Yes, it absolutely dovetails with our comprehensive plan and some of the things we've been looking at.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 7.10, discussion and possible action regarding the purchase of a fire department engine.
Big money.
This is the one you've been waiting for. To pick up where we left off last week, or 2 weeks ago, we have gone back, we've had more discussion. We referred to that earlier as far as our plans with the ARPA funds and everything like that. But the Lampasas Fire Department, we are ready to proceed with the purchase of a fire engine from Metro Fire. We've submitted the detailed plans for the layout of the apparatus and the equipment being purchased with the apparatus. The drawing details and purchase agreement are all available for inspection. Again, turning the page there, I think you're provided with the first sheet of that proposal. The other 100 and something sheets are not attached to it, but I don't think you want to get into the exact size of the alternator and the transmission and everything like that with it. But it is a $942,434 piece of equipment. It'd be custom made for the city of Lampasas. We're definitely looking forward to having that start in that direction and everything like that. So if somebody could make a motion and we'll have discussion. If y'all want questions or whatever, we'll go from there.
I make a motion to proceed with the purchase of the Spartan NXT pumper on a Spartan Gladiator chassis from Metro Fire in the amount of $942,434.
Second.
A motion and a second. Does anyone want to comment or ask a question?
When might you get it again?
I'm sorry?
When's delivery? Do you have any idea if you get to purchase it now?
425 calendar days. You know, I think one thing that I had kind of overlooked in this, and I hope that for the sake of our country and the world, it does say that in the case of strikes and everything like that, but it does detail war. And that's a sad comment that we have that in there, and I just now noticed that, but it should be 425 days, if not sooner.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Chief. Need a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's go home.